The plot of Citizen Kane all revolves around one word: Rosebud. But what does Rosebud mean, and what is Citizen Kane really about? I'll explain. But first, let's start with a major spoiler. If you don't want to be spoiled, click away. Ready? Rosebud is Charles Foster Kane's childhood sled. Pretty simple, but that sled has a much deeper meaning that's core to understanding Citizen Kane's story. My name is Jay Sherer. I'm a screenwriter, a film producer, and I recently directed my first film, No Vacancy. One of the reasons Citizen Kane is considered by many to be one of the best films of all time, it's number one on the American Film Institute's Top 100, is because it influenced thousands of films that have come out since. And the film's opening sequence is part of that unique and formidable filmmaking style. Now, before I explain the significance of that scene, let me say a few things about this film. One, we never really see Thompson's face. It's always in shadow or not facing the camera. I love that because this mystery isn't about the investigator, it's about the subject, Charles Foster Kane. By never making it about the investigative reporter, Citizen Kane remains focused on the mystery and the larger-than-life character whose life we're unraveling alongside Thompson. We're seeing the world through Thompson's eyes, and it's more important that we see Charles Foster Kane and not the detective. Two, the camera angles, miniatures, and flashbacks are all done beautifully and have inspired generations of filmmakers. And finally, the use of visual cues throughout the film is fantastic. There are so many subtle things Citizen Kane reveals via the visuals alone. Newspaper headlines, character expressions, and even the final shot of the sled don't beat the audience over the head. All those nods are subtle, and the audience has to pay attention to understand them all. I love that. All right, now let's unravel the mystery that Thompson never solves. Why did Charles Foster Kane, Citizen Kane, say the word Rosebud on his deathbed? Well, here's my take. The most pivotal moment in Kane's life was when his mother and father became wealthy. At that moment, thinking that they were making the right decision, they gave their son over to Thatcher. That moment was the moment where Kane lost control. Seconds before that, Kane was a poor kid playing in the snow with his sled. But when he discovers that his life will change forever, he'll be rich and mentored by a wealthy businessman. What's Kane's reaction to that news? He takes something he loves, his sled, and puts it up between him and his inevitable future, Thatcher. For the remainder of his life, Kane tries to control his own destiny. He uses people and destroys relationships, all in order to maintain that control. And as his power and influence grows, he sees more opportunities to take control of more things. But ultimately, that quest for control will drive his most valued relationships away from him, leaving him alone with the things that he's accumulated. Which is why the one thing that Kane owned that serves as his last memory of freedom and innocence was his sled, Rosebud. But that sled, which represents his freedom and innocence, was taken from him. After that, Kane decides that he will take control of his own destiny, no matter the cost. He launches a media company and disparages Thatcher. He marries Emily because of her connections to major political players, in this case, the president. He runs for governor in an attempt to gain influence and maybe even run for president down the road. He marries Susan and tries to turn her into an opera star to prove he can still control anything that he needs to control. He builds Xanadu to showcase that he can possess whatever he wants. But in the end, he remembers a time in his life when things were good, when he laughed and played in the snow with his sled, Rosebud. The ultimate premise of Citizen Kane is that the ruthless pursuit of control devours one's soul and crushes one's relationships. Kane reflects back on that pursuit, realizing it all started when he lost Rosebud and lost control of his own destiny. Does Citizen Kane hold up all these years later? I think so. It does feel slow in places, but overall Citizen Kane made its mark on Hollywood for generations to come, and definitely deserves attention for doing so. Did I miss anything? If so, or if you have a question that I didn't address, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you're not subscribed, please be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and if you have a film that you'd like for me to explain, please let me know.